A man named Saxby Chambliss announced that he is retiring today. As a U.S. Senator, he's up for re-election in 2014, but he is not going to run. He was about to get primaried, challenged from the right, from within his own party. He doesn't say this is why he's quitting, but now he is quitting rather than face that challenge. Now that he is quitting, who's going to be the Republican nominee for that Senate seat in 2014?
When they ask me who's the president of you Becky, Stan, I'm going to say, I don't know. Do you know?
Herman Cain has run for Senate before in Georgia, but alas, he said today that even though everybody's asking him, he is not going to run for Saxby Chambliss' Senate seat. The other names that floated immediately to the top were this guy.
And all that stuff I was taught about evolution and embryology and Big Bang Theory, all that is lies straight from the pit of hell.
Congressman Paul Brown, he's on the House Science Committee, straight from the pit of hell. He also says he does not know if President Obama is a U.S. citizen. Also on everybody's short list for the Saxby Chambliss Senate seat is this guy, Congressman Phil Gingrey, who says Todd Akin got a bad rap on that whole legitimate rape thing. Todd Akin was pretty much right about that. And rounding out the Georgia Senate shortlist, remember when the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Foundation decided to go after Planned Parenthood and it was a huge disaster for them? The woman whose idea that was, she apparently is also on the Republican shortlist for the Saxby Chambliss Senate seat. So Republicans are looking at maybe choosing among the birther, science is a lie from the pit of hell guy, the guy who says Todd Akin was right about legitimate rape, and the woman who is so anti-abortion, she managed to get a cancer charity in PR trouble. Saxby Chambliss would likely, very likely, have been reelected to this seat if he was running for it again. But instead, one of these guys? Seriously? This is the exact Republican strategic formula that resulted in Democrat Joe Donnelly getting the Indiana Senate seat that had been held by Republican Dick Lugar for 35 years. It's the same formula that got Democrat Claire McCaskill to hold on to her Senate seat in Missouri when nobody thought she could hold on to it. It's the same formula that got Harry Reid to hold on to his seat when nobody thought that he could hold on to his seat that year. And Democrat Chris Coons in Delaware, and Democrat Michael Bennet in Colorado. This is the formula. This is a familiar scenario for a reason, and it is still going on right now in 2013 in the Republican Party. The last Republican presidential nominee did not come to the presidential inauguration this week. Mitt Romney is the first losing presidential candidate since Michael Dukakis in 1989 to not go to the inaugural. He did go to the trouble of leaking to the press that he probably wouldn't even watch the inauguration on TV, which is classy. But Mr. Romney did actually go to Washington today to attend a luncheon in his own honor at the Washington Marriott Hotel. There's a certain awkwardness to this trip, right? I mean, to come to D.C. not for the inauguration, but for something honoring yourself. That perceived ungraciousness, though, is not just a one-way street. There is a certain amount of ungraciousness that, honestly, is being shown to Mr. Romney right now by his own party. The Republican Party this week has been making a big show of publicly de-Romneyfying themselves, cleansing themselves of all traces of the Romney presidential nomination. Remember the empty chair that Clint Eastwood famously ranted at during prime time at the Republican convention this year? It's now being used as a physical symbol for the Republicans of what went wrong with this presidential nomination. The chairman of the party told the press this week that he keeps that chair in his office. He points it out to reporters as a sign that he's committed to never forget the mistakes of 2012. A Republican strategist telling the Washington Post this week, there is no Romney faction or Romney wing of the Republican Party keeping the flame alive. No one tailors their policies because it was what Romney supported in the 2012 campaign. No one feels like they need to be loyal to the Romney position on any issue. And in the conservative media this week, quote, some Republicans believe the RNC ceded too much control of the party's message to the Romney campaign, which was happy to run the show in the confidence that Romney would soon be elected president. The result was catastrophic. Republicans are even talking about undoing the procedural rules that Mr. Romney established for the delegate process. And they are putting news of that effort out into the press. The Republicans want you to know that they are getting rid of everything Romney. They are taking a hot bleach shower. They are making a very public display of expunging all evidence of his candidacy. Because he, obviously, was the problem with the Republican Party. He must have been. Everything else has been awesome. And that's why they're keeping everything else. The other thing that happened in Republican politics today is that they re-elected Reince Priebus as chairman of the party. Even more amazing, he ran unopposed. So the guy who is in charge of the Republican Party is keeping his job, no question about it, nobody even competing with him. And meanwhile, the purification process of killing off even very conservative Republican incumbents in favor of ever more doctrinaire, further right challengers that are further outside the mainstream, that is claiming new scalps even today. Still, in the United States Senate, with Saxby Chambliss, a guy who in his last election year got an A+ rating from the NRA and a 100% rating from the National Right to Life Committee, he is being forced out. He's not far right enough. Thank goodness they got that Mitt Romney guy out of the way. Now they can go back to all the winning. Joining us now for Insight is Michael Steele, MSNBC analyst, former chairman of the Republican Party, and as always, a good sport. Mr. Steele, it's nice to see you.
It's good to see you, Rachel.
Do you think there is really no imprint at all that Mitt Romney should have left on the Republican Party? They're just trying to pretend like he was a bad dream.
Well, that's just silly. And the fact of the matter is that, you know, Mitt Romney went through a primary process in which delegates and activists around the country voted overwhelmingly for him. And so to now sit back and say, well, yeah, there may not be a Romney wing of the party, but certainly as our nominee, he did have some stature. He did leave an imprint and an impression. And you can't whitewash that. You just can't say it didn't happen, it didn't exist. And if we ignore it and pretend it never did, then everything else we do will be better. And so it's just silly, and it's just typical crap that these guys throw around and put the blame someplace else instead of looking at the internal processes that are much more focused on anything other than grassroots. You know, we take care of our vendors, we take care of our consultants. What are they doing on the ground with state party organizations? There was no reason, Rachel, why this party was not prepared after everything that we had done between 2009 to elect Chris Christie in New Jersey, Bob McDonnell, Virginia, to pick up those House and Senate seats around the country, that they didn't have that ground game already in place that they like to vilify me for, but got folks elected.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I try to understand what's going on in the Republican Party, looking at very broad strokes movements inside the party, I feel like we had Bush and Cheney, we had the McCain-Palin campaign, and that was a primary campaign that was decided pretty early on, and so the party really unified around McCain and Palin. And then we essentially had the Tea Party movement, and the Tea Party movement was manifest as a purification process, primarying even very conservative incumbents for people who were further outside the mainstream, further to the right. I thought that ended with the Romney era, but it seems like Republicans still think that was a good idea.
Well, actually, Rachel, it ended during the early the first few months of my campaign, of my chairmanship. We sat down with a lot of Tea Party activists after the Scaza-Fava race in New York 23 in the spring of 2009. Largely, a lot of the other nomination processes had started, and that effort was underway. So what we tried to do was get in front and say, look, let's cooperate, let's work together, because you can't go after our incumbents in states like Delaware and Colorado and Utah and elsewhere where, you know, but for this individual, we would not have this seat. And so we negotiated a peace, if you will, for further, campaigns and worked cooperatively with Tea Party activists around the country. That clearly had not happened over the last couple of years. We saw what happened to the Ron Paul campaign and how he was treated at the national convention, not allowed to speak, his delegates not given a voice on the floor. And now they're trying to make nice with these guys and pretend that that didn't happen. Well, the grassroots activists have very long memories, and so your words are nice, but your actions say more. And I think that the party has put itself in a very difficult position and will see itself challenged if we do not get on the ground and work with these organizations and individuals who are very fired up and passionate, but put that energy in a very constructive way to support incumbents that we have, particularly in those tough districts or states that we can barely hold on to, like a Georgia. I mean, that seat could come in play depending on who that nominee is, and the party has to give that some great consideration.
That substantive critique from you and the different strands of substantive critique that are happening right now about what happened in 2012 and what's wrong inside the party and the structure of the party makes it so remarkable to me that Reince Priebus was unopposed. I find it
me too.
Astonishing. Yeah, I figured. Michael Steele, MSNBC analyst, former
Amazing.
chairman of the party. Thank you for your time tonight. It's great to see you back.
Right, Rachel.
Thanks, Mike. All right, President Obama